Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another MIDF Conversation, where we host a lunchtime conversation between MIDF and captains of industry and thought leaders. This is a keto lunch for the intellect. No carbs, no starch, just the good stuff. Pure protein and some greens as food for thought. I would like to welcome all our participants, entrepreneurs, CEOs, fund managers, and finance and business professionals, the individual investors investing their own hard-earned money, members of the media, students, especially those studying maths or economics, colleagues, and everyone. I'm delighted to have with us today Tan Sri Yong Poh Kon, the chairman of Royal Selangor International Sdn Bhd and the grandson of the founder. Tan Sri graduated from the University of Adelaide with first-class honors in mechanical engineering in 1968. When he came back home, he continued the transformation of an age-old pewter handicraft business using tin as a raw material into a larger scale manufacturing plant on a 12-acre site in Setapak. Originally known as Selangor Pewter, the company changed its name to Royal Selangor in 1992 after receiving a royal warrant from the Sultan of Selangor. Tan Sri, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
Fine, thank you for hosting.
Thank you. Well, so much to talk about, Andre, about the company. It must be one of the oldest companies in Malaysia, and other things as well, because you're a very civic-minded person, and you've been on many boards and important committees in Malaysia. But let's start first, Andre, with the company. Tell us a little bit about Selangor Pewter and how we got to here from the late 1800s, as we saw from the video.
Well, as you've stated, in the 1880s, in fact, in 1885, when my grandfather came to Malaya then, that small little peninsula was already producing 50% of the world's tin. It's quite amazing, Malaya. And because the name of a tin is so famous, then my grandfather came down from Swatao and started a small tinsmiths company. And the same shop house is still available in Jalan Silang, near the old Malayan Banking building. So from there, we went to Pudu Road, and by 1960, there was a small piece of land, and we began to build a new factory. And that's how we stumbled onto MIDF. In 1960, the government at the time started the MIDF. And in 1962, we got a modest loan, 80,000 ringgit, to build a 4,000 square feet factory. And at that time, it was the same time as when the National Productivity Center was being set up. And it was a confluence of good tidings, because with your loan, we built the factory, and the NPC had this foreign, experts. This is what we mean by when you're an SME, when you first start, the important thing about factory layout, design of machinery, they all came to assist. And I still remember vividly, wow. It was one British engineer, white-haired like you, very wise. And I was amazed that he just sat down and he immediately designed and drafted a tiny polishing machine, which replaced all our industrial revolution type of machinery with big motors, So this was the beginning, which began to put us onto our export programs. And then later on, 15, 20 years later, then we moved to our current 12-acre site. And from where we still continue to export. And during COVID days, we continued to export and depended on our e-commerce because tourism, wasn't around. So this is how we begin to progress from stage to stage. We even have to go to the countries like Melbourne and of course Singapore and England to set up what we call a distributing company, whereby we would import all the pewter from Malaysia, and from then on distribute to the department stores in the other countries. And in some countries, we do set up our own retail shops. And then the story of department stores is the story of how we got our name Royal Selangor, because in the late 70s, the late previous Sultan, the father of the current Sultan, Sultan Salehuddin Abdul Aziz Shah, he was traveling to Perth, with a small delegation. And then the sales girl, of course, didn't know who he was and asked, where are you from, sir? He said, I'm the Sultan of Selangor. And then the girl said, oh, Selangor pewter. And so he was so tickled that when he came back, in one of his shopping trips with us, he related the story, and then we thought, hey, it's good if we could also be the royal pewterer by Royal Warrants. He says, consider it done. Yes, do it. Wow. And he heard nothing until 2 weeks later, the State Exco summoned me, and I had to appear in front of the Menteri Besar, and all the State Exco said, what is this royal pewterer thing that you're talking about? So we explained to him about royal warrants, how other countries, the royalty do confer royal warrants to distinguished manufacturers. And then that's how then they officially gave us a royal charter. And thereafter, we call ourselves Royal Selangor. So we are now, I'm third generation. Now the fourth generation is firmly in place to run the company.
My goodness, what a story. What a story. So can we just go back a little bit to when your grandfather first came? So what kind of pewter were they making then? Was it the kind of pewter things we see now?
Okay. They were a tinsmith. So pewter is actually tin, 95% tin, 95% tin. But tin as a material is often used in combination with other materials. For example, tin is coated on steel plate to make tin sheet for your tin cans. Oh, so okay. You have a lot of people who make tin buckets in those days, in the early days, and that's called part of the tin smithing. But in addition, he was making pewter teapots, for example. He was making pewter ceremonial items for Chinese temples. So those were the early market in the 1800s and then early 1900s, and these are all traditionally made of pewter. Then when it came towards later on, there was the British influence, and then there was this, what we call it, the army, British army. They started asking for pewter tankards, beer mugs, okay, and airtight cigarette boxes out of pewter. So that is how the items then slowly evolved from traditional items into more modern tankards and cigarette boxes, until now we started making children's gifts. And the latest now, of course, are what we call licensed products like Star Wars, Batman, and Marvel characters. So this is all the progress, a progression over the years of adapting to the circumstances that's around us.
Wow, and you started exporting very early on, right?
In the 70s, early 70s.
You started exporting. So, not many Malaysian-made manufacturing companies who are Malaysian manufacturers who were exporting. We have many subsidiaries of multinational companies.
That is true, but this is also one of the emphasis of MITI. MIDF is part of MITI, and where they even talked about encouraging manufacturers from becoming OEM, original equipment manufacturers, where either you make under somebody else's brand name and export, whether it's wooden furniture or something like this, to an own brand name. The own brand name means that you have to cover the entire value chain from concepts, design, making prototypes, making the tooling, then the actual production, the test production, and then you begin to either send the distributors, or eventually from the distributors, you begin even to sell directly to the consumers via your own shops, or now with the internet, direct online sales to anybody in the world. So this is what we call the whole value chain. And if as many companies in Malaysia can do this, then you are capturing the entire value into this country.
That's true, but I'm not sure. I'm find it hard to think of another company, Malaysian company, which is which does the same thing as you do, totally homegrown, rather than that. So in the early 60s, when I guess your father was building the factory and took a loan from MIDF, then was the ambition already there, even then, to become a big company in exporter?
At that time, it was through sheer pressure. I remember we were operating from a shop house in Pudu Road. A shop house. Even the upstairs was used as part of the factory. And the pressure for space was very intense. So that's why there was an opportunity at that time to move to another, which is less than an acre of land in Stapak. And the whole idea was to relieve the pressure of the space and move to Stapak. And then with your MIDF loan, then build a new factory to what we call supply the immediate orders that came. And at that time, in the early 60s, we had a few orders which were what we call direct to the consumer. We didn't start really export marketing at that time. It was just like customers. In that case, was a huge brewery in Canada called Labatt. And I can't remember how many thousand tankers they ordered, which took us a few months to produce in those days. And so your factory, with your help of MIDF, that certainly came in at the right time. And then subsequently, then we moved to a bigger space. Yes.
How, you were a small company in KL. How did you get such a big order from Canada? That's incredible.
To tell the truth, we have very good help. There is also in America, at the time, what was Malaysia or Malaya known for? Tin and rubber.
Right. Yeah.
So in Washington, there was already a Malaysian Tin Bureau. And Malaysian Tin Bureau promotes Malaysian tin to all the American industrialists in America. And it so happens in one of their promotion, of course, they only sell tin and in its raw material. And when we came up with our products, they were very pleased to have finished products from Malaysia. And so they exhibited our products there. And it was how this brewery company, who probably was talking about tin plate as well, stumbled upon our finished products and got interested and wrote to us.
Wow. So this was all government help then? It was the
Malaysian... I think so. In the early days, there was also this government agencies. I mentioned NPC, I mentioned MIDF, and I mentioned the Malaysian Tin Bureau. So all these, as far as we're concerned, were important determinants for us to get some things going. And not only that, but Malaysian incentives were also very important. I remember when I first came back, in 1968, it was the Promotion of Investments Act 1968 or something like this, where they begin to give pioneer status for not only capital intensive companies, but also they introduced a new one called a labor utilization relief. So that if you set up a separate company to do certain things using labor, you are also able to get 5 years pioneer status. So I must say that in the early days, the 60s, and the early 70s, there were a lot of this, what we call promotion of investments to help. And they also have what we call double deduction on promotion of exports, whereby for every ringgit that you spend overseas, you are able to claim another deduction. And at that time, income tax, corporate tax in Malaysia was 45%. 40% tax plus 5% development tax. Wow. So if you double deduct, it meant that you can claim back 90% virtually against your tax. And that was another fillip, which, shall we say, enabled many, many companies to advertise overseas and begin to promote their brand overseas.
Gosh. So I'm just trying to understand, this idea of a family company, and I will get to why you're not listed later. That's really because we tell our clients all the time to go get listed, but you are a counter example that you can be a giant company without being listed. But so you were still a family company, I guess, in the early 60s. But by the 70s, you were hiring other people. So what did you have a design department, or how did it work?
Yes, you're quite right. In those early days in the 70s already, we had to start what we call a design department. because to go to the whole value chain, you cannot just depend on beer mugs and cigarette boxes. And you have to start a design department. And by doing that, we not only have our Malaysians involved, we also have foreign designers coming. So it's this fusion of foreign talent with a Malaysian talent that step by step, we begin to build the capacity to design not only paper and pen, but then later on digitally. And by doing so, you are able then to have your own registration of designs. I remember we used to go to our Ministry of Domestic Trade, to register a design. And there was a long period whereby in the early 80s, maybe when we produced something, some competitors may just take and copy it, and we had to start a whole process of making the legal system work to promote originality. And we would take some of these imitators to court. And then after a period of time, then people begin to appreciate the advantage and the security of having your own designs design registered, because at one time it was Copyright Act, then it was Design Registration Act. So these are the bases we set up. And for the foreign designers, either they come, we employ some of them on our payroll, but we also have foreign designers who are on a freelance basis, whereby a certain percentage of a royalty for items we sold well, they will be going to benefit it.
Okay. So the Malaysians you hired, were they trained here or
yes. There are a few institutions which comes to mind. ITM, for example, Institute of Technology Mara. They had a very good industrial design department. They also have jewelry making. And we also had one of their lecturers working to head our design department for quite some years, But we also have, we had a Danish designer to work with us for quite some years as well. And our current head of design is a British national, So, but he has his whole team of Malaysian designers under him.
Because I noticed you were trained as an mechanical engineer. Was that important? Was that useful in designing the kind of whole manufacturing process?
I think I'm biased, but I think engineering background, a mechanical engineering background is useful because it's grounded on mechanics and basic engineering concepts. I won't say it's absolutely essential, but it certainly helped in the way we developed the company's processes, especially in the beginning, and making sure that our tool and die operations are set up properly. And now, of course, more and more important is the way that you monitor your production processes through your ERP systems and making sure that the orders which comes in get produced on time and just in time. So all this is a good background. And I understand in your audience, you have even some people from the universities in a technical field. So I would certainly encourage as many as possible to go into the STEM field.
Thank you. No, I mean, I think we'll come to this later, but Malaysia wants to become, high income country. We talk about TVET, we talk about skills, we talk about advanced manufacturing, and you're. I mean, I keep going back to this actually, but Selangor Pewter is a test case, and you started, and you've moved to the times, and one of the few global companies, homegrown global companies, which Malaysia has, and we have much to be proud of. Sorry, just to the audience, I mean, if you want to ask any questions, you can please type your questions into the Q&A box, and we will then ask Tan Sri these questions as we move on. So we've talked about how you got to the 70s in terms of the staff and expanding, but can we talk a little bit about being a family company? What's it like? I mean, there are not many family companies which last so many generations. You said the fourth generation now. So is it still family run at the moment?
Yeah, well, let's put it this: it is family held, in whereby the ownership is still within the family, but it is very much professionally run. I mean, apart from, I'm the third generation, apart from my son and my nephew, whom you know, I think. They virtually run the business, you know. So I am taking very much a back seat, but then supporting them is a whole team of professional managers on their own steam. You know, they are also engineers. They are in marketing. You know, they are in HR. So they are all professional managers. And one of the important things about family business, of course, is to try to separate as far as you can the ownership from the management. And by doing this, you begin then to, if you have consultants who help you, there are a whole host of industry set up now, whereby the transition from professional, from a way where to professionally run, and then you have a family holding, how is that interface to be done? You need to have things like your family charter on how to handle your own family matters. But when it comes to the business, then you have your separate boards and your separate committees to look after the business. And I think by doing this, then you begin to get the best of both worlds, whereby you're still able to be intimate to your customer as much as you can. And at the same time, the company is allowed to run on its own basis.
My goodness. So you took professional advice and how?
Yes, we did.
Wow.
Well, there are a few combinations. There's an organization called YPO. I'm not sure if you heard of it, Young Presidents Organization, which I helped to get started in the 70s in Malaysia. And during that period, they also have many, shall we say, sessions on succession planning, issues of this nature. And then we also engage professionally a company which set us all these procedures, and that's how we come to this stage today.
Wow, that's really, man, that's forward thinking. I know many people I know they don't think this far ahead. I mean, family owned, wealthy individuals, but this planning for the future, that's really is good. So the rest of the family are, as you say, they're owners, they may be shareholders, but they're not involved in the management.
No, only two. Yeah, two of them.
Wow, that's good. That's good. I mean, I think European businesses are like that, right? I think the European family businesses seem to be like that. You know, they talk about the German businesses or the Italian families, the French. They run things like that. Gosh. So you're one of the first companies to go international. You exported a lot, and then you're saying just now you opened up offices all over the world. What is it like hiring foreigners? Working and opening an office in Britain or wherever it is and hiring British people. I mean, how did that work? Was that an easy thing? Because I know many Malaysian companies have had problems doing that. We want to expand overseas, but then when it comes to hiring,
Yeah, you're quite right. There were two instances where we did send our Malaysian manager over there first. I mean, to get it going. Then we started to hire the British managing director, but thereafter he retired. But we asked him to stay on the board in the UK company. He's still on the board now in our Malaysian company. And then we recruited another British to take over. But in Australia, it is an Australian. That's for sure. We recruited an Australian. And in Canada, it is also a Malaysian, but he's a Canadian resident. So that ties in quite well. And he still sits on our main board here. So I think it is step by step. You have to get it going. And then thereafter, you get your people to be set up in overseas.
So you started with sending someone from
yes
an office to set it up first, and then
correct.
And then hire. Yeah. It's always hard. It's always hard to with it. Yeah, getting the cultures to work together. It's not always that easy. Okay, can we talk a little? I mean, in terms of acquisitions, have you done many acquisitions? I mean, is it always? Are you just into pewter, or do you do?
No. Well, we're all related. We set up a jewelry company called Selbran with it was started as a joint venture with some German and Austrian jewelers. And then we also bought over an old silver company called Cummins, This company is quite unusual, it is about probably 400 years old.
Wow.
And we came across it, well, it was maybe 15, 20 years ago now. And they have a huge collection of what we call patents, silver models of old English design teapots or candlesticks. And I remember going to the factory there when we opened up all these old patents. There were a whole range, maybe 20 cabinets. By the second cabinet, I couldn't tahan anymore, sneezing and coughing. I just had to back out into the open air because the accumulated dust of a few hundred years on those patents was really amazing. But for us, it was a treasure house because from there, you get a lot of design inspiration to make new items for present day use by using very traditional silversmithing skills. And we got a British silversmith to come here for a few years to train our Malaysian silversmiths. So that's our Comins venture.
So you're using the Comins designs to make Selangor pewter?
Well, a combination, yes. Some of them we do, and some of the tankards we do make use of the silver designs. But we are still continuing the Comins name. We are still manufacturing it and exporting it back to UK and Australia, and we're also selling it in Malaysia. So it's a combination. Oh,
so you make the silverware here?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So this 400-year-old British brand, you go to London and you buy a Comins silver teapot.
It's from here, yeah.
From here. Yeah. And it costs like $20,000 ringgit or something like that. These things, the silver
That's
things.
Right. Yes, yeah. It's quite a high price thing. Silver also, like tin, all the commodities are going up,
Yeah, but I mean, it's not every day you buy a 20,000 ringgit teapot or a 10,000 ringgit candlestick. Well, I understand that's the kind of market. That's incredible. And again, I don't think many people realize this actually, that you've bought over and actually taken over an old British company, and now you're doing and exporting it back.
In fact, it's quite interesting. If you go to some of the auction houses, Christie's, etc., you will see some of this Comins old silver antique pieces being auctioned off at a very, very high price. But some of it we are still making in Malaysia, but eventually may come to such a high price, but not now.
Yeah, no. Wow.
Okay.
All right, good. So now, there were many other pewter companies in Malaysia in the old days. But they didn't go. Do you know why? Do you have any theories why Selangor Pewter managed to change with the times and export and grow, whereas the others didn't? Was it because it was a family owned, lack of capital? What was it, you think?
Well, I think it is you pointed right, when we started a design department, that is the root or the beginning of it. And if you have good market intelligence as to what some of your customers may want, and then you are able to, with your design department, to come to it, to make it into fruition, that is how things you begin to shall we say, adapt to the circumstances. Like now, one of the strongest selling items is our phonos. It is your, what do you call it? Your hand phone. Where you just put onto a stand and it amplifies the sound without any electricity, and then it amplifies you can hear your music or you can hear your conversation talking to it for the desk. And during COVID, when people are still at home, those are the items which are continuing to move. So you just got to be adaptive, That's why education is important, right? You need how to...
It is. Okay. And let's see, we've got some questions. So let's see whether some. Okay, first one is from Mazlisa. What is the glorious moment for the company and the biggest setback as well throughout? So first question. I don't know if you can see it, but the question is,
yes.
what is a glorious moment for the company, and what was the biggest setback throughout this time? Yeah.
All right. I start with the setback, right? The biggest setback must have been the last 2.5 years, of COVID, which affected many companies in the country. People in the airline business, in the hotel business, and to us, it's a little bit related because a part of our business is tourism related. And of course, when no tourists come to the country, that part of the business is gone. So it's quite significant. Apart, of course, to the May 1969 riots, that was another big setback for us. So these are the things where sort of impinges a company, and you must have a certain amount of resilience, not in terms of finances, but also including the personnel that you have in the company to be able to buckle down and then do what is necessary to maintain until the times recover. And we are beginning to see some green shoots in tourism coming from the countries which have opened up, and they are coming bit by bit. As to the glorious moments, well, there are many, many glorious moments. One of them would be perhaps our centenary, in 1985, where we celebrated, and Museum Negara was so kind that they opened up the museum and gave us a display for a few weeks, whereby all the VIPs and the royalties came to have a look. So it was to us quite a good, shall we say, recognition that we are very, very much part of the history of this country. And in fact, for many years, we've been using the slogan of Malaysia's gift to the world. Or you haven't been to Kuala Lumpur if you haven't visited the Royal Selangor factory. So this is where we attach ourselves with the country, and it's especially apt. This is a Merdeka month, and we ought to celebrate that spirit.
Thank you. Now, some questions here from Cindy and Louis about ESG and resources. Tin, the raw material is tin. Is there an ESG issue?
Yes, in fact, I would want to relate a story. ESG, of course, now is very much in the news, but even 25 years ago, I remember flying to Switzerland for the World Wildlife Fund, whereby they wanted to order a whole series of plates of endangered animals. And we were about to get that order, whereby they will give to, or they sell it on a limited edition and raise funds. But one of the directors, they said, no, we cannot do this. We cannot use pewter, because pewter comes from the ground and is mined. Therefore, we cannot use it. So I lost that order. Now, to me, that was, I think, one extreme. And in environmental and sustainability, it is entirely feasible to do mining of tin, and thereafter we cover it up in a proper way to maintain its natural topsoil, that things can grow again. Unfortunately, I agree, that for many, many years, in the early days, they'll just dig a big hole and then they go off, and then it becomes a big mining pool, right? Which we're all aware of. But it is possible to, shall we say, rehabilitate the land. And land is valuable, and I'm sure companies would be more than happy to do this, to at least bring back our mining capacity in this country, rather than now is languishing with only one or two existing mines in the country.
Right. Where do you get your tin from now, Tanjis? There's no more Malaysian tin, right?
Well, it's a very good question. We know we get our tin from Penang, the smelters, but we do not know from where the tin comes from, because as you're right, Malaysia probably now is doing only a few thousand tons compared to the 30 to 40,000 tons. So the majority of the tin that is smelted in Malaysia is from overseas, imported, whether it's Australia or Myanmar, whatever it is all melted together with Malaysian tin. And then when we buy the tin ingot, it is a mixture of every source country.
Okay, so it's Penang, the MSC in Penang.
Yes, it's still there. There were two
Yes.
smelters, but one of them is still there, and
Wow.
we've been buying from them all this while, you know.
Oh, well, this is the economy of Malaya in the 1950s, I guess, but it's still.
Yeah.
That's right. That's great.
No,
So-
and if they are part of ESG, I see the question is true. Just prior to this, I was as part of the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, we were hosting a webinar on sustainable energy, net zero, you know, how we can bring down our carbon footprint. And I'm proud to say that, you know, in our premises, our rooftops on our plant, they are all what we call solar powering.
Wow.
And we are getting the max. You know, I think we allow 70% of our usage to be self-generated, and I think we are
Wow.
doing that. You know, so
Wow.
this
Wow.
is a good thing to do.
That's good. That's good. There's a question here from Jessica Lim. I remember reading Selangor Pewter having challenges during the Japanese occupation, and Selangor Pewter went around their customers and friends to subscribe for a few of their pewter items to stay afloat. Can you please elaborate more on this?
Oh, well, during the Japanese occupation, it was really tough times. You know, number one is we were not able to produce as much items as we could. And we even had to resort, I remember, resort to making, because we were pewter and tinsmiths, we were reduced to making two things. I remember, you know, how to call it, the spout of the rubber tree, right? When you tap a rubber tree, there's a little tin spout where you poke inside the tree for the latex to drip out into the cup. So we were making thousands of those simple shapes out of tin sheet. It goes to show how what we were reduced to, but in times of need, that is about the only thing that you could during those Japanese occupation times. You know, it is.
Gosh. So Jonathan, I mean, you know, on top of being a very successful businessman, you've done, you know, you've done your civic duty. You've been on so many government organizations and boards. Before we go through some of them, where do you find the time? Do you not sleep, Nansri? You know, you run a big company.
No. Well, one of the advantages of is that the new generation have taken most of the load off me, you know. So I'm able to help out, you know, whether things like Bermuda or things like this when I'm outside, you know, doing this. But it is one of those things you have to go along.
No, I mean, you've been on, you know, Federation of Malaysian Manufacturers, Bank Negara Board, MCMC Founding Commissioner, MIDF Board, MAPEN Board, Bermuda Co-Chair. I mean, there's so many things you've done, including being the captain of the RSGC and the president of the RSGC.
Oh, that's for fun, no? That's for fun.
Well, I don't know. That's for a lot of people. Being a president is already full time, but you know, that's amazing. So, it sounds like you've been really involved with the whole, you know, industrialization policy of Malaysia. And, you know, we're reaching this crossroads now as a country, right? We're supposed to do 4IR, we're supposed to go and do automation and all that on the one hand. But on the other hand, most of our factories, in fact, most of our businesses still rely on foreign labor and you know, not just foreign labor, but, you know, low wage labor. So where do you think the company should go? I mean, is it really feasible to say that we're going to stop employing low wage labor and just go straight into, you know, Industry 4, IR 4.0?
No, I would like to approach it this way. I mean, in all our years of dealing with government and private sector, if we wish to influence private sector's behavior in the right way, it must be a combination of pain and incentives. In other words, it cannot be business as usual like in the past, an unlimited flow of foreign workers, because that is the cheapest solution. It will depress wages throughout the country, but that is compounded by the fact that the whole process of approvals for foreign workers, agents, there is a whole ecosystem. So what what we did, in fact, in Bermuda, we raised it more than 8 years ago, is to follow a system like Singapore, whereby there is a graduated scale according to the percentage of foreign workers you have. The levy that you pay will be higher. For example, you have only 10% foreign workers, you pay 100 ringgit, or 30% foreign workers, you pay 200 ringgit. It progresses. And there was a committee 2 years ago set up under the previous government, and it went around the country, and they made a certain recommendations. One of the things is that the scale of increasing the levy must be such that it begins to have an impact on the businessman's mind that, hey, I rather do something else rather than paying this 300-400 ringgit levy per month instead of that, so that it influences their decision to either automate or not. And this fund, it is important to be treated like HRDF, whereby whatever you pay, 200-300 a month to the levy, at the end of the year, you are at liberty to claim back 75% of it for your automation spending. In this way, it's a carrot and stick, you see. You need to have this. Otherwise, if you just charge 100 ringgit, 200 ringgit for levy, it does not enter into the calculation that they have to do some automation. So that is one thing that we have to do for the country. I know some of my manufacturing friends may get a bit upset at me, but we cannot have an unlimited supply of foreign workers coming into this country. In a weekend, you walk to Petaling Street, you walk to any street, you find yourself lost in the country that you are living in.
But that seems to be the business model of all manufacturing in Malaysia at the moment, right? That bring in as much cheap foreign labor as you can.
Precisely. There is a huge demand, all right? But supply and demand always intersect when the price is adjusted up and down. So raise the price. Like in Singapore, they will raise the price so that the demand for foreign workers will be lower. Because it is getting too expensive, they must think of alternatives. One example is mamak store, right? They say many mamak stores will close. Why? Because there's been a flood of foreign workers coming in. Whereas you go to Japan, you go to Switzerland, there are not so many waitress or waitresses ratio to the customer. Before you enter the shop, there's a huge electronic ordering board. You just press what you want. By the time you get into the cashier and pay, your food was almost ready to be collected. So these are things like this that has to be done to overcome the problems that we have.
No, I mean, the current policy, I think what the thing you're doing is having 20% foreign labor, right? And 80% local. That's the...
Well, number one, 20% may be too much for certain companies, and 20% is not enough for certain companies. Who fixed this arbitrary 20%? You just fix the rate. You want 20%, it's going to cost you 200 ringgit. You want 40%, it's going to cost you 400 ringgit, for example, levy. But it's not gone. You can still take that money end of the year to help you automate. So you get both ways, you get a benefit.
Are the powers that be listening to this, Ansri?
Well, I'm not sure about the powers that be now, because I think elections is on their mind. And you have also seen in recent days, there have been so many changes to the labor things, whether it's minimum wage or now 48 to 45 hours. Only yesterday, MEF, came up with a strong statement that this is going to cost the country 111 billion to implement. Even the, can't remember now, maternity leave going up, it costs a few $1 billion. Of course, when you make a decision as government without quantifying the effect, it is easy to legislate and give, but someone's got to bear the cost. I know Ministry of Finance have lamented that the subsidy bill is going to be 70 billion this year. And they're finding, it's a heavy burden. But now, if the MEF figures are correct, by just changing these labor rules, it's going to cost 111 billion. Now, these numbers like this, we stack up that some of the bureaucrats have to think and calculate. Now, is this the right time to do all at once when many companies are just recovering from COVID? They have been losing money for the last 2 years, So on top of that, this is a self-inflicted, shall we say, burden that they're going to do. So somewhere along the line, I think the communications is not going through, and that has got to be addressed. That's for sure.
Yeah, but there is, we have the economics ministries like the finance ministry or international trade ministry, and then you have the labor ministries and others who don't necessarily think of the economic aspect side of things.
Yeah.
But you were at Pemuda, and
Yes.
when you were there, Malaysia went up in the doing global ease of doing business rankings. How did you do it? How did you change? How do you make Malaysia easier?
I wouldn't say
do
it's
business?
me, that's for sure. The co-chair was Tan Sri Siddiq Hassan. He was quite a strong man at the time. But one of the important things when Pemuda first started, and where the Prime Minister at the time was Tun Abdullah Badawi, and he got this idea of a co-chair between private sector and public sector to chair a committee of 22, 12 from the public sector. They're normally the KSUs or Director Generals of the key economic sectors of the country. And on our side, we got 10 captains of industry to meet. How did we do it? We did it by having what we call a focus, that these people gathering together a few times a month, without fail, the last Friday of the month, 9 o'clock, we would meet regardless. Everybody comes, no replacements, no substitutes, especially among the civil service. If you are a KSU of MITI, you come. You cannot delegate, so that we have continuity of thought. And when we start again, the next meeting, we commit to what we did the previous meeting. And secondly is, actually for us, is pro bono. We go, there's you heard of PTD, right? Pegawai Tadbir, the PTD officers. We are the PTG, Pegawai Tanpa Gaji. But we did it because in the beginning, there was a lot of suspicion. But after 1 or 2 meetings, when we found that the civil servants were arguing in front of us, then we realized that we have got their trust, that they were doing all this. And we begin to offer suggestions. You say, yes, that can be done. In turn, they also offered suggestions. Because what happened was, the World Bank ease of doing business, they count 10 parameters. How long do you take to get your electricity, for example? How long do you take to incorporate a company? All this, and how long to sue in the courts, the commercial courts, to get your payment if somebody were to default. And you must remember, in those days, on a commercial contract, it may take you years before you sue somebody.
At that time, it would take years. You never see a case.
You never see a case settled. So much so, then when a foreign businessman come to set up a contract in Malaysia, they say the place of education or settlement will be in Singapore.
Yeah, arbitration in Singapore. That's right.
It's shameful, for us to do this. And we highlighted it already in one of the early meetings, that number one, there are not enough judges. Number two, the system is wrong, and the cases are postponed. The lawyer say, I want to postpone, and the judge will say it's postponed. The other side will say it's going to be postponed anyway. Let's agree to postpone. So it is things like this that we have to push. And to his credit, Tun Zaki, when he was Chief Justice, because we went to the previous justice, he said, no, don't interfere with the judiciary. But when Tun Zaki was there, first thing to come to my house for tea. And a few of us, we went to his house, explained to him, let us set up a new commercial court. New rules to be heard within 9 months. And true enough, he did it, and then the rest is history. Now your commercial cases are settled well within 9 months.
Yeah.
And then we call them the new commercial courts. So a series of such things. Malaysia's ranking from 2007, when we first started Pemuda, was 26. We said we want to be the top 10. Why? because the country south of the border, that little red dot, is number one. They have the same rules, the same British laws, and many of the civil servants are Malaysians or ex-Malaysians.
Yeah.
So why don't we aim high, top 10 from 26? In 6 years, we became the top 6 in the world.
Wow.
Through all these deliberations with the civil service. And it is the civil service who can push through this, and they can do it. So I have great hopes, for it to continue.
Thank you. Wow. That's good. I mean, that's a change. I mean, certainly as a lawyer, I saw that, I stopped practice law by then, but so fast. Yeah.
Yeah. And as a lawyer, you would know, when we first proposed this, I must say, some members of the Bar Council really went after us and went after Tun Zaki to say, justice hurried is justice buried, or something like this.
Okay.
So you cannot rush it. How can you postpone things, But say no, we say no postponement. Everybody have a new rule, only under very extraneous circumstances. And we will record them, And true enough, after that, he put in a lot of rules like this. It began to move nice and smooth.
That's right. Yeah. Good principle, then. No postponements of court cases. That's a good principle.
Yes, good principle.
Very good
That's a good principle. Yes.
Very good principle. That's right. But okay. Now we're almost out of time. We've got a few more questions here, but I think one question. I have a question from Yusuf Yako, my friend, Dato' Yusuf. As a true blue Malaysian company, what would your message be to Malaysians for the month of Merdeka?
Well, for the month of Merdeka, I would really like to see greater national unity and a greater recognition of every one of us as Malaysians. I believe one of the strongest impediments for our country to reach its full potential is the fact that after so many years, we are still very much compartmentalized and divided into either a respective racial or religious compartments. There are few aspects to this. Of course, there are things in the Constitution which says, for example, Article 153, that we must preserve the special position of the Malays and Bumiputras in the country, and that's fine. But the key word there is position. It's a special position, and it's also due to the fact historically or also economically, but we cannot go to Article 153 only on the first clause, a special position. If I recall right, Article 153 has got 9 subclauses, and we should go through every one of them because every one of them do protect and balance it far better than what some of our present policies are. Like, for example, we should reserve a certain percentage of licenses. We should then, those licenses must be reasonable. Then another clause also says, however, if no such requirement was necessary in the past, you shall not deprive someone from renewing his license based on 153 of reservations. That is why when I see the Freight Forwarders Association, when they say their license, they cannot renew it unless they get 51% Bumiputra equity, it really contravenes Article 153, subsection 8, I believe it is. You cannot do something like this. But because of the last 60 years, not 60 years, it's only after 1970, or 1975, that issues like this begin to rear its head, that we need to have a reset. Look back into what is 153, look back what is reasonable, and scale back. And it does not apply only to economic matters. It applies very much also to the way we value our electoral rights. Is one man, one vote. But that one man, one vote have to be tempered with the original constitution, which says that the constitution, the constituency of each MP shall not waver from the national average by 15%. For example, if the national average is 100,000 seats, 100,000 voters per seat, the smallest should be only 85,000, biggest should be 115,000. Then everybody's vote is reasonable and become equal as Malaysians. But what has happened in 1963, because of Malaysia, because of Sabah and Sarawak, we cannot have the 15 because Sabah and Sarawak, because of the agreement that areas are big and the population small. So we adjusted it to plus or minus 50%, 50. Which is quite reasonable. It's still, 100,000, 50% up and down, 50 to 150. And it went on because it's Malaysia, we needed it. But what really tilted everything over and caused a lot of present-day problems, in my opinion, is that after 1969, I think, the racial riots, they amended the constitution to say no limit. No limit means you could have Putrajaya 20,000 and Bangi 200,000. So it is this imbalance which also makes a lot of racial politics become more toxic. And I think it is time to bring back so that the proportions are more mixed, because after all, over the 40, 50 years of what I call malapportionment of constituencies, the Malays are now 70% urbanized. So if you make very big urban seats, it will be the Malays themselves who will be disenfranchised. And this has been brought about. So my wish, as you say, for Malaysia is we try to bring back some more equality on the voting rights, economic rights, and bring together a more inclusive keluarga Malaysia. That is the slogan. And I think various things need to be reset. And once it's reset, the country will begin to reach the potential that it really deserves to have. You look at Vietnam, they are going great guns. They got more foreign investments than us. And very soon, if that continues, just like Singapore, the national per capita income will also rise in accordance with that development. So I do hope in this month of Merdeka, we have better inclusiveness and better outcome for all of us, because only with that, we are able to reach our full potential as a country.
Great words, Tan Sri. Thank you. So final question, and this is one people have been asking, and I would like to ask actually. When will Royal Selangor get listed? And and of course, you will appoint MIDF to list you.
Oh yes, sure yes, we would.
But when will that happen? And why have you not listed?
Actually, that question was first posed to us in 1975 or 76. Yeah, remember the Industrial Coordination Act?
I see.
Yeah, you see, earlier acts, 1968, Promotion of Investments Act, all this were very promotional in nature. But 1975, the Industrial Coordination Act was one of the first acts we felt that was very restrictive, because for every factory, you need to get a manufacturing license. And they will say you get it automatically. But you get it automatically with 31 conditions. One of these conditions is you must restructure, 30%, 40%, 30%. So what the NEP of a global target, that means out of 1,000 companies, you must have 300 Malays, 400 non-Malays, and 300 foreigners. That was what was intended. But as a shortcut implementation, they brought down to 30% in every company. And so when that happened and there was this requirement, we said, well, when we go listed or when we get listed, that's not an issue because then everybody's owning the public shares, right? So our position was there were many constraints. In fact, now many of my friends have gone listed, say, oh, they want to take it private, you know. So we said, look, we have very supportive bankers. In fact, any financing that we need, you know, our bankers would come and support that any facilities that we take even now are totally unsecured.
Wow.
You know, yeah. So based on our word that we will pay them back. So, and all the 4 or 5 bankers who come and they say, okay, we trust you. We see that you have no reason to do otherwise, and our assets are there unencumbered, not pledged to anybody. So that was the basis that we had friendly bankers to move along. And what the first one was MIDF, you know, in those early days. So that was why we didn't get listed. Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, you don't need the capital. It's a great position to be in, where people are chasing you to give you money rather than you needing to raise money. We've come. It's been an hour. Fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. And I think you know, just on behalf of everybody listening in, just like to thank you again, and to congratulate Selangor Future on being one of our Royal Selangor, to being one of our champions. You know, we all Malaysians, I think, are very proud of Royal Selangor. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And,
Thank you. Nice
happy
to have
Merdeka.
this
Thank
chat with
you.
you. Yeah.
All right.
Merdeka.
Thank you. So we can just press the leave button now.
All right.
All right.